He is also with the Congressional Oversight Panel, and Congresswoman Melissa Bean, a Democrat from Illinois. Well, Congressman Hensarling, we saw you a couple of days ago talking to Tim Geithner about all this, and particularly in light of the fact that Citi is now contemplating a plan to pay back the money that it was lent, the $45 billion it received from taxpayers through the TARP plan. Do you think, let's just start with Citi, do you think that Citi should be allowed to pay back as soon as possible?
Well, absolutely, commensurate with their regulator saying that the institution has achieved safety and soundness levels. I can assure you the taxpayer wants their money back. And if the taxpayer can get their money back and get a decent rate of return, we want to get Congress and the administration out of the business of making lending decisions. That needs to be left to a competitive marketplace, and the sooner the better.
Representative Bean, you're on the House Financial Services Committee, and you serve on a subcommittee on capital markets. Specifically, I'd love to know if you felt that the president's speech yesterday from Federal Hall had enough oomph, had enough power to talk about future regulation that would fix future problems and crises, avoid them from happening again.
Absolutely. I think the president made a loud call for action to put in place greater and more effective oversight than what we've seen in the past, particularly focused on transparency, market stability, increasing capital requirements in a counter-cyclical way, so we don't make future downturns as systemic and severe as we'd experienced in the past.
Congressman Hensarling, at Fox Business, we have people on both sides of whether or not the government did the right thing in coming in as dramatically as it did last fall. But we see many of the same people in power now guiding our financial institutions, of course, starting with Tim Geithner, who was head of the New York Fed back in the fall. Is there any real substantive change that has happened in terms of guiding the financial community and the government role in the financial community with this administration as there was in the last 6 months of the previous administration?
Well, I fear that matters have gotten even worse. I mean, the TARP program, which was originally an emergency piece of legislation aimed at creating financial stability, I fear has turned into a $700 billion revolving bailout fund to advance the administration's social, economic, and political agenda. I fear that it is enshrining us as a bailout nation. As money comes in, they send it right back out. They crossed the line when they decided to bail out GM and Chrysler, clearly not financial institutions. They crossed another line when they shorted investors and shorted non-unionized workers in the reorganization where they favored the UAW. They crossed another line to give a big chunk of Chrysler to Fiat if they would produce green cars. I mean, that has to do with the president's global warming agenda. It has nothing to do with financial stability and taxpayer protection.
Representative
and they're
Hensarling,
enshrining us as a bailout nation, which is costing $700 billion. Absolutely.
Let me jump in on that, because I'd love to know your perspective then on the stability that has come, at least to the stock market, in the wake of all of this bailout money that actually did start under President Bush and Henry Paulson, beginning with the TARP and then traveling all the way through to President Obama and major spending through there. Does it give you any appreciation for the fact that we have not seen our markets, our equity markets, collapse?
Well, again, I think what's more important is not what TARP was, but how is TARP being used today? I mean, you can make the case, and historians will debate it for quite some time. But if you look at the LIBOR OIS spreads, they were substantially down, hugely down by the time President Obama was inaugurated. Now, that doesn't mean we're totally out of the woods, but we're also creating financial instability. We're keeping private capital on the sidelines when people are fearful of doing deals with the government and essentially having their investment erode or be confiscated, as it was in the GM and Chrysler deals. You hear it throughout the investment community. All of a sudden, they're having to factor in political risk. And we're looking at a nation and an economic program that is tripling the national debt in the next 10 years, and we still have the highest rate of unemployment we've had in a quarter of a century.
Let me let Congresswoman Bean back into the picture here. Congresswoman, specifically about TARP repayments, There is some concern that once that money is returned from Citi or whoever wants to return that money, if it's allowed to be returned, it won't go right back to the federal treasury. It'll continue to be used in the TARP fund for whatever purpose the Treasury wants to use it. Do you think that is proper, or do you think the returned TARP money should go back into the general coffers?
I think the ultimate plan is to recover as much of the TARP funds that were extended to help people through a period of financial collapse to the taxpayers. There is an end on the TARP program, and I think that's the ultimate goal, but we're not out of the woods yet. We're still seeing some failed institutions, and I think right now they're reserving the right to see where there may be additional assistance required. But to also go back to the market question that Liz raised, I think that's an important one. There's no question that we were at an abyss, and people saw when Congress initially failed to act in support of our financial institutions, they saw the value of their pensions and their savings and their college savings drop drastically, and we have seen some recovery in that regard. Still much more to happen economically to make people feel even further confidence moving forward.
Our thanks to Representative Melissa Bean and Representative Jeb Hensarling. Good to have the discussion. We'd have you